Hello and welcome back. This is our second episode of the Scenic Route podcast, and today we are going to do a little bit of story time. And this story is a tough one because it just happened recently and it's kind of a long one, so we're going to probably break this into 3 episodes or maybe more. And the hope is that there's some positive takeaways for parents with special needs kids to take from this whole journey that we've just recently been on. Some tips, some tricks, and just some
advice, and just to share our story. To be honest, I think it's really beneficial for us to just open up, and I feel like a lot of even our friends don't even know the story fully. We've only shared it with, our parents pretty much. So this is feels very vulnerable for us to even kind of just share all of these details, but also very therapeutic in a sense. So
yeah, definitely.
I'm really excited to dive in.
Yeah, so it all started, we love to travel, and we've always loved to travel, and we've done that so far with Elon quite a bit. So far he's been to Costa Rica, to Maui, to Arizona, to Mexico, and back to Arizona. So that brings us to 2021. We decided to take our first family road trip, and we drove down to see Jasmine's parents and niece in Tucson, Arizona. And that was in November. And that's kind of where our story begins. But we're going to fast forward to the traumatic part that changed the whole trip, which was just a normal night. It was bedtime routine. Our wonderful niece, Selena, was actually making Elon's medicine. And we had just recently purchased a new acid reflux medicine for him, and it was just a different style of pill. It was the same exact medication, but when you broke up the pill and turned it into a liquid base, it had some chunks in it. And if you know anything about tube-fed kids, clogging of the G tube is a very common thing that happens. And this is actually the first major experience we've had with it. We had a couple nights where it kind of seemed like it clogged, but then it kind of cleared. And this night in particular, yes.
So I'll talk on this because I feel like I cleared his medicines with this G, or I was administering it.
Yeah, and it's just stopped.
Yeah, and so I was administering his medicines through his G, and it just was getting clogged. Nothing was getting pushed through. So I was telling Evan, I was like, oh my gosh, it's not working, and can you come look at it? Yeah. And Evan, being a stronger guy, forcefully pushed the syringe really, really hard, and then all of a sudden you heard this big pop. It sounded like a champagne bottle just popping.
Yeah.
And so that freaked me out because I looked at Elon and I was like, oh, was it internally? Something popped, but it wasn't. We noticed that it was on the side of the G port, the exterior part, that there was kind of a little bit of a split. And then from there, I remember just looking at each other and well,
here we go.
We have to go to the hospital because first of all, his G is very important for, first of all, administering medicine, but also for venting. He needs to be vented whenever he's eating, otherwise he gets really congested, and it's just very uncomfortable for him. So it is very crucial that he does have that access to the G for specifically those reasons.
Yeah.
And so
this is 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and we just Googled children's hospitals, and we ended up at Tucson
Medical Children's
Hospital.
It's TMC.
TMC, something like that. And it was kind of a stark introduction. We went into the ER, and it just kind of felt loud and kind of dirty and just very uncomfortable. And we just kept looking at each other is this what we're gonna do? Or should we do something else? Should we fly home? It was just the flood of thoughts. So we're this isn't good. We did end up getting into the room, and we had an awesome nurse to start, or I shouldn't say nurse, sorry, a doctor that came in, and we were brainstorming with her. We were like, okay, can we just fix it and then we can get it replaced when we get back home? Just a flood of thoughts and information that we were just trying to figure out, because switching a GJ tube does mean it's a procedure.
It's not as easy as just switching and replacing a G. Just
a G,
there is the guide wire that you have to.
If it was a G, I would have just replaced it at home. It would have been 5 minutes and we would have been done. But the J goes into your intestines, and it's a pretty big deal. So we we're going back and forth, trying to decide if we were going to stay there because it just didn't feel great. But she gave us the confidence that there are some great surgeons, some great doctors here, and they're going to take care of our son. So
I think for me personally, I think that experience was a lot more terrifying for me than Evan, because I did feel very uncomfortable right away taking him there. And I think because of his home hospital, we've spent so much time there, sadly. They just are on a different caliber in terms of like care and knowledge and the amount of specialists that they have. So coming into this new hospital, nobody knows anything about Elon. Like the fact whenever nurses are asking about the GJ and, oh, what does this do? And I have to teach them, it makes me pull back and I feel really uneasy, because it's like, wow, like you can't fully care for my son. Like, can you step away? And in a very respectful manner, because I do respect nurses and doctors everywhere. They're very helpful and they know their job, and I'm not gonna put them down by any means. But as far as like being a mom and being in that situation, like my gut was telling me that I wanted to just buy a plane ticket and fly back home with Elon.
Yeah. And it's just crazy because you think the word children's hospital, if they have one and you're in a major city, like you're good, that's all you need. And unfortunately, they're not all built the same, and there's not the same level of care and understanding of really complex kids. They could probably take care of 99% of kids. Our kid is the 1% in a lot of regards. And so having people that really understand the nuances of his diagnosis and his complications is very important. So, Jasmine stayed the night with him there. I went and got some rest. I came back in the morning and it ended up being procedure time, and their internet goes down and all the computers go down and all the phone lines go down, and they're kind of coming back in every once in a while, and we're like, hey, like we need to get a status update. We need to feed our son first of all, and what's going on? Is he going to get a procedure today? If not, we are leaving right now. And it's crazy because the computers were down, the internet was down, the phones were down, his procedure doesn't require any of those things apparently. And so he was bumped to the front of the list, and probably by 10 a.m., 11 a.m.?
Yeah, it was around 10.
We were in doing the procedure, and it was crazy because it was a sedated, or a not fully sedated, but mild sedated procedure. And I was in there with him until the moment where they started. So I was trying to like calm him down, and he was pretty calm and relaxed. And I left the room and I was standing there with Jasmine and two nurses, and we were just like a wall away. Like there was like actually a window too. And it was just so weird because they're like, okay, this should take about 5-10 minutes and no big deal. We'll be in and out. And I mean, the time was just ticking so slow. And the nurses are trying to make small talk, and it took about 25 minutes. And I tell you, man, those 25 minutes, somehow I get nervous about everything that he goes through. And again, this is just a standard procedure, but standard procedures can turn bad somehow, right? I mean, there's always a risk.
Yeah, well, I think no matter what the procedure, I think if once it's your child, you're putting your child's life into somebody's hands, and like, here, just take good care of him. So that had happened. The doctor came out from the procedure and he said, he did express that he did have a little trouble getting into his J, and so he had to apply a little bit of pressure, and he didn't say much more than that, but it was a little bit more difficult than he had expected. When we had Elon's IV administered, I feel like that was, for me, like the last line of, we're not going to go through that experience again, just because, it's like when some of the medical professionals kind of like fight you on like, no, we need to do it this way, but we've already gone through enough IV experiences with Elon that we know he does best when we hold him, and Evan could hold him firmly down and get him more comfortable. And then also requesting specifically like a skilled phlebotomist or an IV team. I feel like that's really crucial too. And then there's another medical device that they use, and they puncture the skin to numb it before they can even administer the IV, and requesting that. Like there's a lot of little things I've learned and that we can ask for before, just handing our son over. I'm like, okay, yeah, just administer his IV, just because not having the proper equipment and skilled individuals, it could make the experience very, very, very traumatic, which we've had our experience before, and I feel like that was the last bad experience I will have with him.
Well, no, we're gonna have more bad experiences.
No,
trust me.
But that's what I've learned.
But okay, but the point of all of that is that we had to advocate immediately, and it's very much go time when you're in the hospital. And like Jasmine was saying, we're meeting all these people who have never met Elon. They have no clue his story, his needs, and his differences. And so you, as parents, you immediately have to micromanage in ways, because you know what each step of the way can mean for your son. And just being an absolute advocate and arguing and building trust with the nurses immediately is super important. And they will fight you a little bit because they're just stuck in their ways and they're just trying to do their job. But you know that this is your child's life and comfort on the line, and so.
And we're always very respectful. Like
I know, but you got to be firm though.
But yeah, you do, and sometimes people won't take it that way. But the most beautiful thing I've ever heard from like a doctor or nurse, they had said, "Oh well, you've been his doctor longer than I have," and that always stuck with me because it's so true. Because we aren't certified nurses, but we truly are nurses at the end of the day in terms of like the medical care that we give our son. So
yeah, and so this brings us to the next chapter. I don't think we're going to get very much further in this story because we're going to try and keep these all to 15 minutes, but we decided it's time to go home. It's time to kind of start making our journey home. And so we drove from Tucson to San Diego 2 days later after his procedure. And we did notice that there was a weird transition. It just seemed like he was having trouble eating his food fully and being comfortable with his food. And the only thing we could attest to it was that he just had a procedure. So something must have gone wrong. And of course we have that trauma and that information from the doctor, like, yeah, I had some trouble, so I kind of had to like force it in there a little bit. And you just hear those things, it just keeps playing in your head. And this takes us through the next basically 2 weeks of his life where things were fine and then they weren't fine, and then they were fine and then they weren't fine. And we were just trying to read our son and just understand, is anything wrong? And if so, what is it? And we ended up going to the ER twice in San Diego because we were just so fed up and concerned that his cries weren't normal, his pain level wasn't normal, he wasn't sleeping through the night, and we were just really struggling to nourish and provide food for our son. And sadly, the results from those 2 visits were, of course, long days, 6 to 8 hours in the ER each time. And they did a GJ tube feeding test and swallow study, or not a swallow study, but like a feeding test through X-ray. And it came back normal both times, which shows that the G and the J were operating properly. And the doctors could only decide that it had to be something based on his bowel movements and his stomach and motility. Which they do say that after a procedure, your motility can slow way down, and he hadn't been going to the bathroom regularly. So we really tried to treat it in that regard. And we went back to the ER like that second time, and that was kind of our last draw of like, hey, we're officially headed all the way back up to Oregon as quickly as possible. And they gave us the all clear. We did a blood test on him. They tested, for infections and all those things that you should test for. And they kind of gave us the all clear, like, yeah, I think it's just the motility thing. Like, you guys will be fine, but you're just gonna have to take it slow. So after that second ER visit in San Diego, we reached our breaking point of we're not getting any sleep. We have to go home immediately. And it was that same day we ended up leaving San Diego, and we got in the car around 5 o'clock, started driving. We passed LA. We end up in the middle of nowhere. It's foggy. It's a 2-lane highway. Jasmine's driving. There's semis passing us and going, it's just a very stressful, even driving situation. Elon's crying in the back of the car, and I'm just back there just trying to comfort him and just hoping that he'll fall asleep so we can continue our really long drive home. And I look over and he's silent, and his body is just convulsing, and it was a seizure. And we had never experienced that with our son up until that point. And I thought that was it. I really did. I was in such a panic. Jasmine's still driving. I try and rip him out of the car seat, and I'm trying to unbuckle his car seat buckles, and he's still convulsing. I finally get him out, and I'm just praying that he'll just kind of snap back to and just be okay. He was burning hot. I rolled down the window. It's freezing outside, but he seemed to like it. He started crying again, which is a very good thing. And that's where we're going to leave you with this episode. Probably one of the most traumatic moments of my life and probably Elon's life. And from here, it even gets crazier. So we'll see you at the next episode, and we'll continue this story.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.